Hello, everybody, and welcome to Keeping It Young podcast, conversations about marriage, family, and ministry life. I'm Dave.
And I'm Bethany.
And we are the Youngs. Hey, everybody, thanks for joining us today. Bethany and I are happy to have you on board.
Yes.
And thank you for listening and helping us to reach our recent 100,000 downloads goal.
Wow, that's amazing.
And, we never thought we would see that.
No.
And, what in the world? That's crazy, isn't it?
It is.
And we feel a little like, well, okay, there you go. So that's
well,
pretty
when
exciting.
we're just sitting and recording and it's just the two of us in the room, you know, you can't even fathom 100,000 people listening to what we're doing right now.
And hey, that is kind of crazy.
Right.
And so thank you. And I hope you will continue to like and share.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think what we're teaching is, if there's somebody you know, you think it'd be a help to them.
Right.
We'll encourage them to tune in and listen as well. And this fall has been a real encouragement as far as the podcast goes.
Yes,
and,
yes.
Revival after revival, we've been just able to meet folks that, hey, we listened. And I had a guy tell me today that he had listened to one of our subjects and what that meant to him. I even got an email today and a text today.
Wonderful.
From guys that are listening. And I know we've met a lot of people this week in our revival that has listened as well.
It's always encouraging. Usually one of the first things they say is, "Hi, and they say their name, and we listen to your podcast." And it's so fun.
And so keep staying in contact with us. We love to hear from you. And, of course, any of you can reach out to us, whether we're near you or not. You can go to our keepingityoungpodcast.com.
Right.
You can send us an email. You can also send us a voice message. You can visit us on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. We'd love to hear from you. And we are putting together some question answers for a future question answer episode.
Right.
And we'd love to hear. You can ask us anything. And primarily, though, about ministry and marriage and family is our focus. So we'd love to hear your questions, and even if it's a question on something personal, if you're just always wondering how you guys do this, or what you do, or how you handle that, or what you eat.
True.
Whatever you want to ask us. That's an easy one to answer, so
yes,
easier than some. So we would love to hear from you. So reach out to us. And actually, we are this week in West Virginia.
Yes.
And so we're not too far from Morgantown, West Virginia, in the little area of Clarksburg. Bible Baptist of Stonewood is our special meeting this week. So if you're available Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, well, I guess not Sunday, but Monday,
you'll be hearing this on Monday.
Tonight, or Tuesday or Wednesday, we'd love to have you. We do have a Thursday night youth rally as well, in which we have a exciting program scheduled for young people Thursday night.
Right.
And then next week we're in Fairmont. So we're in this area for 2 weeks. So if you live in this area, come see us.
In the beautiful, wild state of West Virginia.
West Virginia. So we'd love to hear from you or see you if you're able to do so. And then we also wanted to just take a moment and tell you about the 2022 Couples Prayer Advance.
Yay!
Bethany and I are speaking at that. We've been on that schedule for some time. And our friend Harold Vaughn has agreed to allow us to add just kind of to that prayer advance a Keeping It Young podcast advance.
Meet and greet.
And meet and greet. It's not technically a Keeping It Young sponsored couples retreat.
Right.
But he's agreed to allow us to join with the Couples Prayer Advance and to invite you to come join us. The dates are October 13, 14, and 15. Starts on Thursday afternoon.
Of 2022.
And it ends on Saturday morning.
Yes.
And so put that on your calendar. Put that on your schedule. Start thinking about joining us. It's Gatlinburg, Tennessee. It's Pigeon Forge. We'll be meeting at the Ridge in Pigeon Forge.
The Ridge.
And sometime in the next 3 to 4 weeks, we will have a website available where you can get all the information and even start signing up.
Start registering.
So that's coming.
That's exciting.
We'd love to see many of you from all over the country, and certainly from the Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, Kentucky, all that area.
Yes.
And so put
anywhere.
That down.
Fly in from California.
Bring it on. Or Canada if you want to, if you
there
can
we go.
Get out of Canada.
Yeah, there we go.
October 13 through 15, 2022 are the dates, so we'd love to hear you.
We call it Keeping It Young Unfiltered.
I don't
know. That sounds a little edgy, doesn't it?
Sounds a little edgy.
We are a little unfiltered anyway because we don't edit these, so.
And so who knows what you might learn. We're going to start a new series here today and talk with you about it through the next couple of weeks. Coming up series, we're going to examine 2 books that we've been reading.
Right. Kind of just an overview.
Just some lessons we've learned from them.
Right.
And the first one is going to be from a book called Sacred Marriage by Gary Thomas.
Yes.
And to be honest with you, it's a book that I wasn't sure that I would like. It was given to me as a gift. And the subtitle of the book kind of, it was one of those that kind of, I don't know, rubbed me the wrong way. Is that too strong of a phrase, probably?
I don't know.
But it's subtitled, What If God Intended Marriage to Make Us Holy Instead of to Make Us Happy? And when I read that, I thought, well, why separate the two? Can't you be holy and happy at the same time? And
yes.
So I kind of misjudged the book. I must be honest. I threw it on my desk and thought, it's another marriage book. And kind of forgot about it. And then somewhere over the last, 4 or 5 months, I picked it up and just started reading it and ended up devouring it. I thought it was an outstanding book. It was very helpful. It is just a book, so it's not the inspired word of God or anything like that. But we learned a lot from it and are learning a lot from it. So we thought we'd take...
I honestly haven't read it yet. It's on my to-be-read list or to-be-listened to.
So this is exciting because
list.
I'm going to throw some questions and things at her in the next couple of days. And so she'll be hearing some of this. We've gone over it, things that I've learned. Yes,
we've talked a lot about this book and the book that I read while we walk in the mornings. He's shared things from Sacred Marriage, and I've shared things from Loving Him Well, and so I feel like we're on the same page.
We are. So
yes.
Let's just get started here and some lessons we learned from Sacred Marriage by Gary Thomas. And here are some overall thoughts, just to kind of get in. Early in the book, he says, and this is a quote, "A wedding calls us to our highest and best, in fact, to almost impossible ideals." And then he says this, "It's the way we want to live."
Yes.
And that really is kind of true, isn't it? A marriage is so exciting. It's the way we want to live. A great husband and a great wife and madly in love.
Everything's always the romantic fairy tale.
It's exciting. And even the world kind of thinks that way. Isn't that where we get the Disney princess movies?
Yes.
And everything is beautiful and romantic and exciting, and she finds her handsome prince, and
they live happily ever after.
So he's right in that statement. You think, I think that's an incredible statement. But then he shortly follows it up with this statement, and this is a really good one. He said, "I think most of us who have been married for any substantial length of time realize that the romantic roller coaster of courtship eventually evens out to the terrain of a Midwest interstate. Long, flat stretches with occasional overpasses." And I thought, now there's a picture, because we lived in Ohio and we've traveled a lot.
We have traveled a lot.
And the Midwest interstates, those long, flat stretches.
Right, and people that are not from Ohio, they would say, "I hate driving through Ohio." But if you never leave the interstate, it is a boring state if you just drive straight through. But it's a beautiful state if you leave the interstate.
It is, because you see the people and all the little towns and all the exciting things in the valleys and the farms and all of that.
But I can see the relation there, how that you have a honeymoon and you are newlyweds, and then real life happens, and day after day after day is the same.
And that is the point he's making. And his overall thought on that illustration is that marriage, this is just kind of normal for marriage.
Right.
It turns into the normal everyday routines of we got to go to work, we've got to make the meals, we've got to do the laundry, we got to pay the bills, kids come along.
Right.
We got to change the diapers, we got to get them to school, we got to get them to practice. Life is just this long, flat stretch with occasional overpasses.
Right.
And so life does happen that way. And what he says in the book is that responses vary. And here's a few he threw. I don't know, maybe you could think of others, Bethany, but he says that a lot of people run at this point. When they lose that happily ever after feeling, the wedding is the pinnacle of the excitement of their relationship.
Oh, sad.
And the wedding was this princess fairy tale. They spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on this exciting wedding and this honeymoon, and then find out that this person they married is a fairly normal non-prince kind of person after all. And so here's what a lot of them do. They run. At that point, they look for romance in another place. We've seen that.
We have seen that.
Many, many times.
Yes.
And then he said this one, I thought this was kind of funny too, that some resort at this point to marital guerrilla warfare.
That's not having a Nerf war with your spouse, because those are kind of fun.
Really? do share this with our audience, my love.
Well, just an occasional, here, let me shoot you with the Nerf gun and what happens.
My wife used to wait till I was in the shower.
Oh, okay. This had nothing to do with Nerf guns.
It's not Nerf guns, but she, just for fun, would pour cold water over the shower.
Just a squirt from my saline solution.
That's what she would do. It was a saline
solution. Just a quick cold squirt.
Little saline solution shot on you when you're in a hot shower is a little startling.
But that's not what
what we're talking about here. No. Some resort to Marilla, to marital guerrilla warfare.
There we go.
Meaning they blame each other. Well, it's your fault. Right. It's your fault that our marriages turn monotonous. It's your fault that you don't do this. And
you need to do something about this.
It's your fault that this happens, and you did this, and you didn't do that. And that's a really sad warfare.
Right.
That's a problem. And others just decide to get along and make do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's boring, and wish it were better, and I'm not going anywhere because we got the kids to take care of.
Or we're Christians. We don't consider divorce.
Which is
why
sometimes it startles us when a person who's been married for like 26 or 30 years ends up in divorce.
Right.
And maybe it's because they eventually do come to the place where they no longer have any reason to stay together.
True.
One of the funny things that happened in our revival, and we're scheduling, as we're recording this, we're in Iowa.
Yes.
And one of the funny things that happened in the week is that one of our staff guys was out soul winning, and he knocked on this guy's door, and the guy said, best thing that's ever happened to me, he said, I got a divorce after 26 years. Best thing ever happened in my life. And it was a very interesting and unique conversation.
Yes.
But some get along and just make do, even though that eventually falls apart.
Right.
And the point of this book is simply this, and this is what fascinated me. The point of the book is that marriage is something God will use if we let it. We are all cursed by sin.
Right.
We all have struggles. Every marriage is going to have problems.
Right.
But the point of the book is that rather than running from the challenges of marriage, we can admit that every marriage presents these challenges, and we can address them head on from a Christian perspective.
True.
And doing so causes us to grow. It's true that every marriage has challenges.
Right. I would think, too, if you decide, I'm going to grow in the Lord and I'm going to work on this marriage, it would make your marriage much, much better. It would not just be that ho-hum. We're kind of on an interstate here going nowhere.
Yes. And others have faced the same, no matter where you are in your marriage, friends, others have faced every situation you're facing, and they have won.
Right. It's not unique to your marriage.
Nothing is unique to your marriage, more than likely. And it's true that some challenges are bigger than others. We would readily admit that.
Right.
There are some things that you may deal with in your marriage that Beth and I would never have to deal with in ours.
True.
But we all have challenges.
Yes.
And don't overlook that. And knowing how to handle these challenges in a healthy and God-honoring way is the huge point of this book.
Right.
And really, this is the question he asked. The whole book is written to answer the question, how can we discover in the challenges of marriage the opportunities to learn more about God, grow in our understanding of Him, and learn to love Him more?
Right.
And he says that any situation that caused me to confront my selfishness has enormous spiritual value.
Yes.
And it's easy. And do you do this in your marriage? It's easy to focus on your rights, me and my rights. Why doesn't she think about my needs?
Yes.
Why doesn't he meet my needs?
Yes.
And Gary Thomas in this book is writing about saying, if you have greater empathy for your spouse's struggles than for your own, you're learning Christianity.
There we go.
And when you take the challenges that come to marriage, to all of us in marriage,
right,
and no matter what your spouse does, you grow.
Right.
You do the right thing. You become the right person. It may very well challenge your spouse to follow suit, and it may not.
True.
But whether your spouse ever follows your growth or not,
right,
you can grow and have a happy life, even in a marriage where the other spouse isn't what they ought to be. That was a unique part of this book.
True, and I would say even according to 1 Peter chapter 3, of course that applies mostly to a Christian wife with an unbelieving husband, but even according to that, you can live together in good harmony.
Yes.
If the wife is seeking the Lord on her own.
Sure.
You can have a good marriage.
And that's true whether it's the wife or the husband seeking God.
True.
So here's one of the things he says, and Bethany, I think I've heard you say this or talk about this. He said, we can harm our marriages by asking too much of them. Now, you don't say it like that, But in other words, the point he makes is that my spouse can't be God.
Right.
Only God can be God. And I'm pretty sure I've heard you allude to that.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes.
That's so comment on why you agree with that statement.
Sometimes, and I mostly talk with women about this, and so I don't know exactly how men would fall into this framework, but I know that women tend to get expectations. They expect my husband is going to be romantic. My husband is going to plan this date. My husband is going to plan this weekend away. My husband is never going to forget my birthday or our anniversary. And so they have these expectations that they build up. And not only do they have the general expectation, they will have details hung on those expectations. This is what he's going to get me for my birthday. This is where he's going to take me on our anniversary getaway. And so they have all of this already built up in their mind that their husband's going to do it. First of all, they don't communicate it to him.
Am I right? Sorry to interrupt you there, but
right.
Am I right that not only does a lady have those expectations, she also has the expectations that he's going to figure out that she wants that?
Right. So she doesn't communicate them. She just thinks he's going to figure it out. And then if she is not walking with the Lord with those expectations all come crumbling down, instead of coming home on Friday night and saying, hey, it's our anniversary this weekend, I'm going to take you away, he comes home and says, hey, I hope you have food in the house because tomorrow my buddies are coming over and we're going to watch football because there's a big game tomorrow. When all of that comes crashing down, she is...
And that would be a rough thing for a guy to do on an anniversary weekend.
Yes, it would. Yeah, yes, it would. And that's maybe an extreme example there. And that's never happened in our marriage, just so you all know. I'm not speaking from experience, nor am I speaking from a conversation from a lady that I've talked to. But let's say that has happened and all of her expectations come crumbling down. She is crushed. And then she cannot, because she's so crushed, treat her husband in a Christ-honoring way. She cannot love him. She can't respect him. She is belittling to him. And so she has hung expectations on him that only the Lord himself could have met, because the Lord is the only one who can read her heart and mind and knows exactly where she is and can love her exactly where she is. And so I would say that mostly, at least from a woman's standpoint, I do agree with that. When we hang things on our spouses, you need to cheer me up. You need to encourage me. You need to always be there praying for me. Why aren't you praying for me? You need to pray with our children all of the time. When they hang all of these expectations on their spouse, then those are things that only God can do.
Sure.
Only God is perfect, and only God can meet us exactly where we are. I was just going to say, in Psalm chapter 62, David says, my expectation is from the Lord. It's only God who meets expectations.
Sure, and you're talking from a lady's perspective, and I think it's true from a guy's as well.
Okay.
And a guy doesn't have all maybe the details, but he has the idea of how he thinks his wife ought to respond to him when he wants to be with her in the bedroom.
Okay.
Or he has this expectation of, what it ought to be like when he comes home from work.
Right.
So there are maybe different expectations, but all of us look to get our needs met.
Yes.
And if in a marriage, every need I have, I expect my wife to meet that need, what Mr. Thomas is saying in the book is that I'm going to be very unhappy in my marriage because the full needs of my life can only be met by my God.
Right.
He's the one that brings satisfaction. He's the one that meets our needs. He's the one that knows our heart.
Yes.
And that's the whole point of this book. So you did agree with that. That's
I do agree with that.
So
all of our needs can only be met by God.
Right. So here's the question he's answering in the book. And we recommend the book highly. It's been a help to me, and I'm excited even when Bethany finishes reading it to hear more from her perspective. How can we discover, here's his question, how can we discover in the challenges of our marriages the opportunities to learn more about God, to grow in our understanding of him, and to learn to love him more? And one of the unique aspects here is that we can grow and mature spiritually no matter what our spouse does. I already said that, but that's worth saying again. And the point is that our growth is an opportunity. Our growth in spiritual maturity is an opportunity for our spouse to grow as well, but they may not. You have to acknowledge that. So here's the first point that he makes in answering that question. Marriage is an opportunity for us to, and here's a key word, to learn to love.
Yes.
To learn to love.
So from Mr. Thomas's standpoint, the book standpoint, is this learning to love just a growth spiritually, or is it learning to love your spouse too?
Well, it's learning to love your spouse, because his point is that as you learn to love your spouse the way God demands, instructs you to love your spouse, that then you are growing in sanctification.
Okay.
And you become more like Jesus Christ. And it really is an incredible thought. The more you become like Jesus Christ, the more you love. True. And the more you love, the more you become like Jesus Christ.
Right.
And so it's a never-ending cycle in that sense. Catherine Ann Porter, he quotes her as saying this: love must be learned and learned again and again, and there's no end to it.
Yes.
And you and I have been married 28 years, and the fact of the matter is we are continually working at our love.
Right. And we've talked about before on the podcast, different episodes, how that there are seasons to married life and family life.
Yeah. And the reason love is so important, the reason it's the foundation, is because it really is the high illustration in marriage of our God, because God is God is love.
It is. He is love.
And because he says, by this shall all men know you're my disciples. We're talking about Christian marriages.
Right.
And he says, by this shall all men know you're my disciples, if you have love one for another.
Right.
And so we're best to live that Christianity than in our marriages.
Right. I was just reading a post on Facebook. It was actually from one of the ladies who writes for Revive Our Hearts. And she was talking about how that Christian women want to have this great ministry, and they talk a lot about, I'm going to be like Christ, and I'm going to serve in this ministry. I'm going to serve all my fellow man. But she made the point that if that love and service is not first happening in the home, it's just really not happening.
And that's the point he's making.
Yes.
That if we cannot be the Christian we ought to be until we're learning to love in the home. And learning to love in the home opens the door for sanctification in our lives so that we become more and more like Jesus.
Right.
And if I'm supposed to be more and more like Jesus, then there ought to be, at least sometimes in my life, where you recognize at least a family resemblance.
There we go.
I mean, there's no way I can be like Jesus, but I am in the family, and I should be growing to the point that you can begin to see some family resemblance there.
Absolutely.
And vice versa.
And it's most important in the home. David preaches this all the time, that Christianity is most important in your home.
Yes, it is.
Because you can be, quote, Christ-like everywhere you go, at church, at the store, but if you're not living like Christ at home, those are the people who most deserve it from you, and those are the people who will know that you're not living like Christ.
Hey, here's a verse he brought up that I had not thought of in a long time, but I thought it was very interesting. Read Deuteronomy 24 and verse 5.
And this is interesting. Let's see. Deuteronomy 24:5 says, when a man hath taken a new wife, he shall not go out to war, neither shall he be charged with any business, but he shall be free at home 1 year, and shall cheer up his wife, which he hath taken.
Now, that verse has always cracked me up, because it's like, really, honey, you can be happy. I'm not as bad as I seem. That's how I always thought of it. But that's not really the point, because Mr. Thomas points out that if you were a male in Israel, part of your responsibility was warfare.
Yes.
You were going into the promised land, and there was warfare involved in that. And that's his illustration. The glory of a male in that time frame was war. I fought, I won, I defeated, I'm a soldier. And he says here that God interrupts that for the purpose of the marriage. And the point is that God wants a husband to stay home and make his wife happy, meaning that by serving you, by concentrating on making you happy, I am pleasing God. That's an incredible thing to think about.
Right.
Because it's easy for us to think about, we're just going through our emotion. Well, I'm pleasing God because I go to church. I'm pleasing God because I'm a pastor.
Right.
I'm pleasing God because I went soul winning. I'm pleasing God because I read my Bible every day.
Right.
And I don't know that too many men or women think about, well, I'm pleasing God because I really am loving my spouse and showing them.
Right.
But that's the whole point he makes here. And he says, in other words, this is just a direct quote. In other words, I love God by loving my wife. And when I love my wife, I'm learning to love God. And it puts the love that we need to have for each other on a way higher level than most of us recognize.
Right.
And he even says this, a husband who dominates his wife or a wife who manipulates her husband, well, they learn no lessons at all. They're just selfish people living a selfish life in a selfish world.
Right.
But love, he says, unlocks the spiritual secrets of the universe. And we're going to run out of time here. But the point is this. As I learn to love Bethany and she learns to love me, then we become the Christian that God has called us to be.
Right.
We cannot be sanctified Christians unless we are learning to love each other in the home.
Right.
And that's a dying to self. It means I hold my tongue when I could bite back.
Right.
It means I admit my faults and even apologize for them. It admits I don't define myself when I'm judged more harshly than I think I should be judged.
Defend yourself. Is that what you were saying?
Don't defend myself.
Right.
The important thing is not to be right or to be well thought of. The important thing is to love.
Right.
And I just found that first chapter amazing.
It is, and it's almost too much to take in one episode here, but it's just an amazing, amazing thought that if I am dying to self and loving my God and loving my David, then it makes for an incredible relationship, not only with the Lord, but an incredible relationship to David. Absolutely. I don't have to be selfish. I don't have to demand. No, you pay attention to me. You serve me. You love me. I can say, you know what? I love God, and so I'm going to love you.
Sure. So as we close today, let's just apply it in our lives. You know the Lord, and you're married, and you want to please God in this area. So what could you do to show your spouse that you love them? What could you do to die to self?
Right.
Maybe it's time to stop defending yourself. It's time to stop playing the blame game.
Right.
It's time to stop tearing each other down. It's time to stop rolling your eyes and sighing or defending yourself.
Right.
Maybe your spouse is judging you a little too harshly. Maybe they are being critical.
Right.
But stop defending yourself and just love them.
Right.
That, he says, is the essence of Christianity.
Right.
And I think he's right.
And I think it only can be found in that relationship, that closer relationship with God.
Absolutely.
Right.
So that's the first point we've learned from the book so far, and we wanted to talk to you about. Marriage is an opportunity for us to learn to love. Join us next week, and we'll talk to you on the idea that marriage, he says, is an opportunity for us to learn to honor. And some of the things he says about honor was really eye-opening for me. So I can't wait to share it with you. And it'll be
Sounds
very good. All right. Thank you for listening to Keeping It Young podcast. We're glad you joined us, and we'll see you next week.
The Keeping It Young podcast is a Bax 5 Media production.